Hi guys, Jaime from IMeasureU, and welcome to our latest video review of our latest case study done with Mark Armitage. So for those of you that aren't aware, we do post case studies quite regularly, and it is available on our website, so you can go take a look, but let's get straight into it. All right. So as I mentioned, our case study is with Mark Armitage, and it is titled Understanding External Biomechanical Load During ACL Reconstruction Rehabilitation. A bit of history and background on Mark. Mark is currently a lecturer and researcher at the University of Suffolk. But prior to that, he worked in elite football for about 10 years, so a lot of experience. And how Mark got led to us was basically, he notes that injury rates in football have not reduced for a number of years, and re-injury rates remain high, suggesting to him that we've got a lot to learn about on-field rehabilitation processes. And he believes that there's a few things that we need opposed to what we're currently doing. And has led him to ask himself the question, so what? Quite often. And that's led to a lot of thinking and a lot of stimulation of thought to try to figure out what needs to be done. But let's understand that so what question. At present, most practitioners quantify field-based rehab using GPS, which has been shown to be valid and reliable at measuring external running loads, distance and speed. Whilst to date this info has been invaluable, practitioners have perhaps become over-reliant on it in isolation, and now might be the time to support it with new technological innovations that offer additional insights into external biomechanical load. So once again, he's not saying this data is not good. The data is invaluable that he's been getting from the GPS. He just believes we need a bit more, which has led him to combine the GPS and IMU data. So collaboratively using the GPS and IMU Step data, he hopes to bridge the gap between describing activities and explaining them. Probably my favorite quote out of this case study, and really gives you a bit of insight. But let's look at it. Let's look at this combined data. So in this table from left to right, we have distance, bone stimulus, impact load, total steps, low, medium, and high intensity steps. So this is essentially the same session done on two separate occasions by this athlete. So it would appear that on the second occasion, the player covered more distance, 1,643 to 2,233. But with the reduced impact load, if we see in the middle of the table, that impact load drops from 29,000 to 23,000. So a difference of approximately 6,000 there. We can also see an improvement in limb symmetry, 19% down from 28%, as we can see there in session B. So the total steps remained relatively similar. And that basically gives us an overview of the type of data he's getting and that he was looking at, and try to combine it, and just really is, as he mentions, it's starting to describe that activity a bit more. And hopefully I can do this case study justice, but please, I do recommend you read it. I'm just going to touch on a couple of points he mentioned, and starting with asymmetries. So if we look at asymmetries, he presents these three sessions because this was done just prior to isokinetic dynamometry. And the way it works here is down the middle, you can see what we call intensity bins, which is in Gs. And the further left and blue it is, the higher the asymmetry on the left. The further right and orange, the higher the asymmetry on the right foot in that specific intensity bin. Okay, so what we can see here is from the 13th of the 12th to the 21st of the 2nd, we can see a large decrease in asymmetries. So this athlete becoming a lot more symmetrical, but as we know, we don't have a perfectly symmetrical athlete. So when he combines this with his isokinetic data and his IMU Step data, you can see that with the isokinetics from the first occasion to the third occasion, there's a decrease in flexion as well as extension deficits. This can also be seen in the IMU Step data with impact load and bone stimulus. And then there's a few things happening in the intensity from the low to the high intensity steps, which Mark gives a great explanation on. So he does note that there tends to be a downward shift between the bands because the difference between limbs appears to become larger for low intensity steps. So an example he uses is session 1 generated mostly medium and high intensity steps. Session 2, mostly low and high intensity steps. So medium intensity steps transitioned towards low intensity steps. So that just gives you a little bit of insights. And once again, a lot of this is the power is in the practitioner's hands with this data. So with all these differences and everything and all these asymmetries included, these differences basically would indicate that the player achieved more work for less mechanical effort. So something interesting to note, and if we stick on the topic of asymmetries, we'll look on our longitudinal data and a map we call our heat map, we call our asymmetry heat map. So the darker the color, the greater the asymmetry. So the darker the orange, the greater the asymmetry to the right. The darker the blue, the greater the asymmetry to the left. And as we can see here, this is a great example of, you can see quite a lot of dark colors on the left-hand side in October, December, and even the start of Jan. And that becomes a lot more neutral as we move towards February and March, which means this athlete in those varying intensity bins is becoming a bit more symmetrical, which, and as I said, we don't have a perfectly symmetrical athlete, but this is a great visual to show athletes and get them to understand and see where their asymmetries are or what's happening. Are they improving? We've had a lot of guys use it to great effect with their athletes and being able to explain it to them and describe it to their athletes and not just hold the data with the sports scientist or club doctor or whatever it may be. So if we look at this multifaceted approach, so we can see the top snapshot is our IMU Step data or Mark's IMU Step data. The bottom graph is his GPS data. He goes on to state, whilst IMU Step metrics appear to be progressively smooth in nature, which we can see at the top, GPS data contains 2 noticeable spikes, which you can see in the middle of their graphs. So the first one is total distance during session 12, which is in the middle of the top graph of that bottom snapshot. And the second for high speed running during session 13, which is the bottom graph of that bottom snapshot. Whilst there is an increase in impact load, as with total distance and high speed running, the spike appears to be a lot less abrupt. This suggests that although external running load metrics are vital in quantification of field-based rehab practices, giving them context through simultaneously using other technologies yields greater insights into external biomechanical load. Once again, another great nugget from Mark there. But now you might ask yourself, what does this look like using the IMU data combined with GPS data? What does an athlete look like? What do these tools look like? And how do you manage that? So here's just a quick video of one of the sessions Mark had with this athlete, and hopefully they'll provide a bit more insight for you.
So here we have the athlete doing some change of direction tasks. You can clearly see the GPS vest as well as the 2 IMU straps on his ankles if we take a look. With the IMU step data here, you'd be looking to get the specific step intensities for this specific drill via the footnote function, as well as potentially monitoring asymmetries. And with the GPS data, you could be looking to get the accelerations and decelerations.
Cool. I hope that helped. And then let's get back straight into it. So now that you've seen what it looks like combining these two tools, Mark does go on to say we should seek technologies which have a transference across rehabilitation phases. So from gym-based to aqua to Alter-G, different surfaces, field-based, etc. So something using technologies that can be quantified throughout the whole rehab process, from initial rehab all the way through back to that return to sport. And then Mark does go on to give us a little bit of insight into his drill catalog. So he does go on to say that practitioners should perhaps split and catalog sessions to ascertain where work was achieved. So he does give 4 examples in his case study. So I've just chosen 2. So almost expected outputs, so you can start understanding where work would be achieved. So for future planning. So guys, that is the case study in a nutshell. I hope I gave you a bit of insights. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I did it justice. But I would like to end on this quote from Abraham Maslow. I suppose it is tempting, if the only tool you have is a hammer, to treat everything as if it were a nail. All right, guys, have a great week. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch, and we'll be in touch soon.